You're good to go, Steve.
Thank you. Right. Hello, committee. And item number 1, if you could please give your name in terms of roll call, and at the same time declare any interest under procedural rule number 8. Thanks very much. If you'd like to proceed.
Councillor Adams, are you present?
Here, and no declarations of interest.
Councillor Beadle.
Here, and no declarations of interest.
Councillor Brennan.
Here, and no declarations of interest.
Councillor Bullman.
Here, no declarations of interest.
Councillor Catchpole.
Here, no declarations of interest.
Councillor Hartley.
Here, no declarations of interest.
Councillor Holland.
Here, no declarations.
Councillor Kelly. Councillor Kelly.
Here, no declarations of interest.
Councillor King, don't think is present. Councillor Morrell, no. Councillor Nurden.
Present, no declarations of interest.
Councillor Prutton.
Present, no declarations.
Councillor Ryman Tubb, I don't believe is present. Councillor Riley.
Present and no declaration of interest. Thank you, James.
And Councillor Shaw.
No declarations of interest.
Thank you.
So I believe we have 10 present, is it, James?
1, 2. It's 12 of you.
12, is it? Thanks for helping out on the maths there. I couldn't quite see it on my screen. Yeah, item 2, apologies for absence, James.
I have no apologies.
Thank you. I'll move on to item 3, page 5, minutes of the meeting held on June the 2020 for a matter of record and accuracy. Do we agree that they are a true and correct record? Councillors, if you could just indicate by putting your hand up. If not, say you wish to clarify something.
I wasn't present, so no comment.
Okay. Nigel, was you present?
No, I wasn't.
Okay. I can't see everybody. Are we okay, Jen?
I have a comment.
Oh, okay. Sue?
Page? Thanks, Chair. On page 5 of the draft minutes, I can recall that myself and an interest for the Bure Valley Railway, I just wondered why that wasn't recorded there.
Right, I can amend that to include you for the Bure Valley Railway.
Thank you.
Okie dokie. And any other corrections? Okay, going, gone. So move on to item 4. Any matters arising? I don't have any. Are there any from anyone else? Nope, not seeing any indication. Okay, I'll move on to item. Oh, Sue. I've seen a matter arising from you. Sue Catchpole.
Yeah. I was just querying on page 8, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it says it should also be noted that progressing with savings from the collaboration with South Norfolk Council still remained an important element in the medium-term strategy. Whether that was actually discussed at the time.
I can confirm that was raised by Rodney, who pointed
Right.
out at the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okie dokie. So I'll move on to Chairman's announcements. None, actually. I do have something to say on the annual report, which I'll clarify on item 7. So move on to 6. Any public speaking, James?
There was no public speaking.
Thank you. So item 7, page 13, overview and scrutiny and committee annual report. Usually the chair of ONS would present the report. Sarah is actually going to do that today because there were amendments that I had to that report. We did discuss them, but the agenda was sent out pretty sharpish, and Sarah then was sending out a revised version. That I didn't find that in an email, and I know at least one other member didn't either. And I've just clarified with Sarah now that James sent that over on docs. So we haven't actually seen it because we wouldn't be prompted to look on docs for it. So we're a bit blind to that. So what Sarah's going to do, she's going to read the report. Also, Linda is going to put it up on the screen, the revised with the amendments. And then I will come in then and just confirm those amendments in terms of what I previously discussed with Sarah as well, and then open it up for debate or comment or further amendments. So if we could proceed like that, and Sarah, could you present, and if Linda, you could put it up on the screen, please?
Yep. Okay, so the covering report starts on page 13. So this is an annual report. It's a standard item which the committee receives every year. It is slightly delayed this year because of COVID. It will be presented to Cabinet in July. The actual report is on page 16. As Chairman mentioned before we started, the introduction or forward on page 18 is to be written by the Chairman. But those that say that's his words, that's not to be approved by the committee. And then turning on page 19, the paragraph overview and scrutiny reviews under EcoCube, second paragraph, there's just a word missing. So the sentence that says following 3 meetings and an in-depth investigation, the panel, it should say made a number of recommendations.
Excuse me, I'm
Can I
really
say
sorry.
I can't hear?
Yeah, I can't hear.
Sorry.
Can somebody mute
Can we
whoever's
go back,
speaking?
please?
Sorry?
So, somebody's
can't hear
speaking
you,
in the
Sarah.
background, having a conversation.
Oh, well, I'm in a room on my own, so I don't know.
Apologies, that was me. I wasn't muted. I've just muted myself.
All right.
Okay, so
Thank you.
do I need to go back?
Yeah,
Yes,
please, Sarah.
please.
Sorry about that.
What, to the beginning or just?
No, go back to the beginning because it happened pretty straight away.
All right. So just to outline, so you've got the covering report on page 14, which explains what the annual report is. It's a standard item we take to committee every year. It's slightly delayed due to COVID, but it will be presented to council in July. Turning to appendix 1 on page 16, that's your actual annual report. Page 18, which is the forward, this is to be written by the chairman. It's something which the chairman, it's his own view, so it's not for approval by the committee or council. So that will be done in due course. Just on page 19, there is just a slight a typo. Under the heading overview and scrutiny review, subheading EcoCube, second paragraph, first sentence, following 3 meetings and an in-depth investigation, the panel should say made a number of recommendations. The next change is on page 21 under committee training. It's just to tidy up the wording and make it clear. So if I just read out the revised wording. So under July 2019 CFPS, and you've got it on screen in front of you as well, it's to provide members with a clear understanding of their role in scrutinising the council executive and relevant partner organisations. And then on the paragraph effective scrutiny and questioning techniques, just to add some words at the end after practitioners, it talks about with particular regard to finance and commercial scrutiny. And then to add a sentence at the end of that paragraph, further training will also be provided for members of the committee during 2021. And this is to pick up on something the chairman has drawn to our attention, that there needs to be some more training on general questioning skills The questioning skills previously was aimed primarily at finance and commercial scrutiny. There was previously a paragraph on that page referring to collaboration and the Joint Scrutiny Committee. On this occasion, we've deleted that paragraph because the Joint Scrutiny didn't meet during the life of this annual report, so there's no need to reference that. And there's no other changes. So I'm happy to hand back to the Chairman for that item. Thank you.
Okie dokie. So what we could, on those changes, before I go back in, I'll just actually ask if everybody's happy with those changes, and then we'll go back into the report for other people's comments. Could we just take an agreement on that, James?
Yes,
A show of
certainly.
hands. Can we agree those changes?
Do you want me to take a roll call? Or are you all happy with it?
We all happy with it? Anybody not happy with any of the changes?
I'm not happy. Just
Sorry?
I just have one other comment to raise on the corrections on page 20 under scrutiny of the cabinet. Again, it's just a typo. Scrutiny of the cabinet, the last sentence reads call-ins to a minimum and built. It's not built with a T, it should be build with a D. A good working relationship between cabinet and officers. So that was just one small typo that I'd established as well.
Chairman, it could just be a matter of tense, because we're talking retrospectively for 1920, and it did. So we're saying it built, as in it did do, as opposed to, yeah.
Okay.
Then you'd need to change keep to kept, wouldn't you? I think, if we're going to be pedantic.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just reading it just to be in context. Yeah, I think we just need to just look at the, like you say, the whole phrasing of the tense in that paragraph. So we're not sort of looking to change any of the wording. It's just making sure it's grammatically correct. We can have a look at that.
Okie dokie. So on the on the amended version, what I'm asking for at the moment is not corrections on typing, but just on the amended version, the way that it's been amended, that Sarah read out and was up on the screen. Can we agree with that?
Yeah. Can I make a comment, Chair?
Yeah, go on, Nigel. Yeah, go ahead, Nigel.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just going back to page 21, committee training, the July reference. I was just wondering why the end of the sentence has suddenly disappeared, where it says, and to develop confidence in developing effective questioning techniques. Which is part of our training.
Yeah, Nigel. The reason is that when we go back to July, previous training on this I'd had going back to 2013, and I've had before I even came to Norfolk, actually, in terms of scrutiny with another hat on. What should have been delivered is 2 modules. What actually was delivered, the training was delivered on an evening, and it was a 2-hour session. It should have actually been a 4 to 5 hour session with a break. And the first session is about an overview about how overview and scrutiny works, what your legal implications are. That's the first module. You had that. What you didn't have was the second module, which is effective scrutiny questioning, and that's about how to focus in. You hear me quite often say, I think we can have some funneling on that. Now, there's actually a prescript for what that actually means. And effectively, you see it in select committees at House of Commons, etc. So that part of the training, and I've been talking to the admin about it ever since, needs still to be delivered. So therefore, the inference in the way it was written was that it had been delivered, and it's not been delivered. So that still needs to be delivered. Once we get COVID over, that is. Because that part has never actually been been delivered yet. So that's why we've got that sentence at the end of all of it saying, and further training will be provided, to make sure as well, of course, that it's including a budget for training, or it comes within a budget for training, and we don't have any kind of issues there around, well, there's no budget for this, you know. So that's what was amended like that, Nigel.
Okay, that's fine. Thanks for that explanation. Very good. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Nigel. So on that basis, can we agree? Yes. Any objections? No objections being said. We take that as a unanimous agreement. Yeah.
Agreed. Yes.
Now going back to the report, we go through that now section by. Sorry, section by section. I'll just get to it, back to it again as well. So on your written report, but on the one that has been put back up, I guess it might be an idea, Linda, just to pop back up the the revised one, if that's possible, on screen. If we go to the first page, introduction. So we could actually just clear this page by page. So on introduction, any issues with that?
Councillor Catchpole's put a hand up.
Sue?
Yes. Excuse me. On page 19, the paragraph after the list of our responsibilities, I read that with horror, I have to say, and I'm not sure where this has come from. It says, in an age of austerity, it's only through demonstrating the value and impact that effective scrutiny can have, etc., etc. I'm sorry, I'm not doing this just to make sure everything is financially efficient. I'm doing this to make sure that the residents get the best services they can, and that sometimes that might not necessarily mean that we're being overly efficient, but it just reads as a financial statement, and that's not why I'm a councillor, and it's not why we as the Overview and Scrutiny Committee are here. We're here for a whole number of reasons to improve services that people need.
Yeah, I actually, so I'll pick up on this actually, because in that paragraph there, I do actually see the point you're raising. I mean, really, I feel that we could amend that paragraph because really what we're talking about here, I think, is that we've got a role of, in terms of overview and scrutiny under legislation to hold the cabinet to account, to make sure we've got effective to and fro between ONS and the executive, to make for better decisions, public scrutiny as well, and really that could just be reflected in there. And then of course you could then have the paragraph rewritten to reflect that, and in an age of austerity, scrutiny is even more scrutiny is also even more required, or words to that effect, to ensure that this is adequately scrutinized, because there's a pressure there, isn't there? And I think that the point you're making, Sue, is it looks as if it's actually is pointed more towards scrutinizing for financial reasons over scrutiny. And of course, that's the impetus there is not that. We've got a function that we have to operate to anyway. So Sarah, could we amend those words to sort of reflect that?
Yeah, I mean, just this is just a lift from last year's annual report. So some of this is just obviously a cut and paste. But that's fine. So just to be clear, we just want to change the wording to sort of remove any inference to its financial. There's not financial reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue that Sue's raising, and in hindsight as well. In an age of austerity, it is only through demonstrate the value of impact of effective scrutiny can
Really take that out.
Yeah, take that out.
It might be
That
better
whole,
just to take
the
it
whole,
out.
that whole bit out. Yeah.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
we're into quite complicated rewrite, I think.
Yeah. Now we'll just take that whole paragraph out if you're happy. Yeah.
Is everybody happy with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the next section, overview and scrutiny reviews.
Can I interject, Chairman?
Yes, Peter. Hello.
You asked if we were happy, and I'm not.
Ah, right. Yeah, that's what we need to know. So what you're not happy about, Peter?
Well, I'm entirely comfortable with the concept of cost effectiveness as a key element and driver of the overview and scrutiny committee, and I don't want it to see it removed.
Okay. Yeah, Peter, I think that what we're saying here is that overview and scrutiny, you know, when you read the guides and everything else, is about everything we do within the council, the executive decision making on a whole range of things, which also include financial aspects. As you know, we had quite a discussion last year to ensure that we complied with overviewing and scrutinising the budget. As you know, Peter, we had quite a discussion about that, and it was done late.
Yes.
Yeah, it was done late, so we do. So I think that the point here is, it's not that Sue is saying, or myself, that's not what we do. I think the point is that when you read that, it looks as if the focus now for overview scrutiny is being focused totally down that route. So we either rewrite it so we encompass that in a way that also talks about that, but also mentions about the the total legal reason for us being, or we just take it out.
Well, I would prefer to expand it.
Can I come back in, please?
Yeah, go on, Sue.
For example, last year we approved the Citizens Advice Council Tax Protocol, which has been implemented, which was in no way only to demonstrate the value and impact of effective scrutiny on a financial basis. So I think the word "only" is the thing that I really have issue with.
Yeah, there is a point. So.
I'm quite happy to expand it, but I'm not happy to delete it.
Yeah. Okay.
And also, I think the age of austerity is somewhat last year. That phrase.
You wish? I'm not so sure about that.
Well, I think we can move on from that.
Chair, could I suggest that we have two additional bullet points to take up the members' concerns? So we could do one with effective management of budgets, and also Sue's comments about other things which matter to us. So a couple of extra bullet points would clear all that up.
Well, and remove the
remove, yeah.
Chair,
yes,
I think it would be if you took out "in an age of austerity" and started the sentence "it is," took out the "only," so it goes on "it is through demonstrating." I think that fits the bill.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, Sue. Absolutely. Peter, that would actually cover your points.
I'm comfortable with that.
Brilliant.
Okay. I do, sorry, Chair, I do think we need to add something in to make it more people-centred.
Let's just do this one point first, Sue, about this paragraph.
Yeah, I agree with what Sue said.
So could you just repeat that again so I can just strike this out?
Delete "in an age of austerity."
Yeah.
Start the paragraph "it is."
Yeah.
Delete the word "only," and then carry on. So it reads, "it is through demonstrating the value, blah, blah."
Well, that works, but I also think there should be one more criteria added, and other organisations to deliver better, more cost-effective And then there needs to be something that encompasses our in the best interest of our residents.
Chair,
Can I come in?
can I come in, please, Chair?
Yeah.
I think the way through this is where in that top line of that paragraph, replace "it is only through" by includes. So it would then read, "in an age of austerity, includes demonstrating the value and impact that affects austerity." So it's not exclusive, but it is actually saying that we've got to demonstrate the value and impact. So I think that would be appropriate.
Can I just say that if you go with Sue's wording, the value element is also for our residents, isn't it? And the impact, the effective scrutiny. I don't think there's an issue. Once you take out the only, it seems to me that it works perfectly well.
Thank you.
I quite agree with Sue. Just if I can have my comment. If you read just below the points 1 and 2 below at the top, Sue Catchpole's concerns are actually addressed in the Overview and Scrutiny Committee looks into areas of local concern. It recommends improvements the council can make to ensure quality of life is improved for all. So we've actually said that in this introduction, and then we can go on to say it is through demonstrating the value that we actually ensure quality of life being improved. So those are just my comments on that.
Okay, I'm happy to accept Sue's amendment. Sue Prutton, that is.
Yeah, I agree.
If I could just come back, I think that's right. If you read, you need to read that whole section in totality. I think if you read that, had that sentence in isolation, it would perhaps be of concern, but you need to read, as Councillor Nurden said, the introductory words as well.
Yeah. Also, agree with the words that Sue says. There's still the last sentence there, which I think we could actually just improve as well. It picks up on Peter's point as well. On the last sentence of that paragraph, it says that scrutiny will endeavour to be a valued element of local democracy. So it says more cost-effective services. That scrutiny will endeavour to be a valued element of local democracy. Well, what we're actually saying is more cost-effective services. That scrutiny is a valued element of local democracy. So you take out the word "will endeavour." We are.
Yeah. So shall I just read that out just to be clear?
Yeah.
So that sentence will now read, "It is through demonstrating the value and impact that effective scrutiny can have in supporting councils and other organisations to deliver better, more cost-effective services that scrutiny is a valued element of local democracy."
Yeah. That covers Peter's point as well. All right, are we all happy campers with that?
Yes, that's fine, Chair.
Yeah. Okie dokie. Okay, so can we move on? Peter, you okay?
Yes, I'm okay.
Thank you, Peter. Right. Next section, scrutiny of cabinet. Sorry, I've lost that on the screen now. Scrutiny of cabinet.
Oh, there's a typo.
Yep. Oh, another one.
Following, sorry, 1, 2. Oh, under EcoCube, the second paragraph. Following 3 meetings and in.
Oh yeah, we referenced the word "made" is missing.
Oh no, it says. Oh. Following 3 meetings and an in-depth investigation. Should it say by the panel?
Well, if we change it to the panel made.
Oh, I see. Okay,
yeah,
that's fine.
Yeah,
yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okie dokie. Okay, page 20. Everybody happy there?
Chair,
Yeah.
under scrutiny of the cabinet, and then PH1 decision, member grant scheme. I'm not quite sure that our thoughts were simply to retain parity with members at South Norfolk for the member grants. So it seems to have assumed the reason why we asked for that, and it wasn't the only reason why.
Yeah, but I think so. The important thing is it reflects the debate, and this came out of a piece of scrutiny, if you remember, that I had done on my own, going through the basis that was presented to the SIAC committee previously that I was on, and then also what actually happened in the presentation that was given on that, and what actually happened in South Norfolk with their scrutiny in cabinet. And it was through the presentation of that call-in and risk to the current Broadland policy, which is quoted in the portfolio holder's decision. That was the reasoning why why I called it in, and it does actually reflect what went on at that point in time. The important point, I think, is the portfolio was not minded to change the decision, and then it goes on to say, but it was confirmed that it would be considered as part of the budget setting process for the following financial year. I took that, and I think that means a review, and we've not actually had anything back on that yet, as far as I know, Sarah.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's still in situ, I believe. So as it stands, I think it's quite accurate, actually. It reflects the basis of the scrutiny coming forward in the first instance, and also the community grant scheme as well. So we said that we would like to see a review for both, that we had the community grant scheme plus also this £1,000 as well. So it's in there, I think. What's the next PH1? Procurement of new grounds maintenance contract. Yeah, that looks pretty accurate to me. Legal service provision. That's still in progress as well, but again, it's quite accurate. We've already agreed the amendment on the committee training.
Chair, just going back one bit. Meeting with Cabinet to discuss the budget. It says in December 2019, the committee met informally to discuss proposed questions for Cabinet. Why is that informal? Why was that meeting informal? Or in what way was it informal?
Sue, it's sorry, it's Emma Hodds here. Apologies for being late. That was the meeting that we all sat in the council chamber, if you recall, and it was done ahead
I know
of
what the meeting
that
was.
One. Yeah,
but I don't know why it's being called or referred to as informal.
Because it was an informal meeting. It wasn't a formal meeting. That we had that session, and then we had the meeting later. But that December one was an informal session. If you recall, everyone moved round tables to go through the budget.
Yeah,
that's the one that it's referring to.
So what? Yeah. So what that means is that's the one that where we meet to form our questions. Now from that, Emma, we do actually derive a piece of paper, don't we, in terms of our questions?
Yeah, you're correct. Yeah, you're correct, Chair. So that that meeting was formulating, if you recall, I think myself, Sarah, and someone else formulated those questions for you, and those questions were the ones that were then put to cabinet on the budget. But yeah, that was that process for that.
Yeah, so I can see the point. It's not a formal committee meeting, and I think your point, Emma, is that because it's not a formal committee meeting, that's why you're referring to it as an informal. But it does actually result in actions which are questions on to the cabinet. These were presented at a meeting, questions to cabinet. These were presented at a meeting, cabinet where, yeah, well, okay, yeah. It does actually say that on that last sentence, I guess, doesn't it?
Can I interject?
Yeah.
I was just wondering whether it wouldn't be better to just say that in December 2019, members of the committee met informally, and well, I wanted to bring in the word workshop because that's basically what we did. Yeah. We held a workshop, and we discussed proposed questions for cabinet.
Yeah, it's called the pre-budget workshop, scrutiny workshop. So we could change that to that, couldn't we? The committee
held a workshop.
Well, the committee met informally through a workshop with officers.
Pre-budget workshop. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Could you just read that out for us, sorry?
Did you want to keep the word informal? In December 2019, the committee met informally, we could say through a pre-budget workshop.
Or we could take the informal out because
yeah, just met
a workshop.
Yeah.
There's no point to it then, isn't there?
Or the committee had. So the committee had a pre-budget workshop.
Held, perhaps.
Or held.
Held, yeah.
Yep, held a pre-budget workshop, discussed proposed questions, etc.
Yeah, and then the formal doesn't. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think we just used the word formal, informal to show that it wasn't a public meeting and you weren't guided by sort of the constitution procedure rules. That's why we sort of clarify.
Yeah, I understand. That's the point I was sort of agreeing with Emma on. But again, the workshop covers it then, doesn't it? Okay. Right, committee training, we've already done this, campus, so I'm not going back into it again. Committees communicating scrutiny. It's the next part on the bottom of page 21. Right, are we all happy with that? Okay, right, moving on to page 22. All happy with that? And then got the appendixes, haven't we? Which I've looked at. They look pretty accurate to me.
Yeah, so just to clarify, Chairman, so Appendix 2 is what we call like the recommendation tracker. And this is just to show where ONS perhaps made a recommendation to Cabinet and whether that was adopted by Cabinet. Yeah. So it's just sort of a summary, just to give a flavour of the various items and where there was agreement or not. And this sort of leads also into another item on the agenda, which we'll talk about later.
Okie dokie. Okay, so I think that brings us to the end of the annual report. Thank you very much. And move on to item 8, the time and task limited panel.
Chairman,
Cube final report. Have I missed something?
You need to agree the recommendation.
I thought we'd just done that, James.
Okay.
We did it section by section.
Right, so you're happy with it? Everyone's happy with it?
Yes, because we just went section by section.
Okay.
So moving on to 8, time and task limited panel. EcoCube final report. And Grant, as the chair here, would you like to present that, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, the Time and Task Panel reconvened a meeting on the 10th of March. At that meeting, we interviewed Councillor Clancy as the portfolio holder at the time that EcoCube was released. The meeting didn't establish anything new, and we closed the meeting with the decision not to have any further meetings. So the recommendation in 7.1 is to note that the Time and Task Panel had concluded its investigations into the disposal of the EcoCube and no further action was necessary. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Grant. So the recommendation, as Grant just pointed out, is on 32. 7.1, the committee is recommended to note the Time Task Panel concludes investigation, disposes the EcoCube and no further action was necessary. So committee, we're happy to finally accept that Time Task closing report and the recommendation there.
Sue Catchcole has raised a hand question.
Okay, Sue.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose, having been on that panel, I just wanted to make one comment, and that was when that councillor was asked if he had his time again, would he do everything the same or would he do anything different? He was definitely reassuring us that he would do differently. I just don't feel this reflects that under the findings, and I think that might reflect on him as much as it reflects on the council, that he described that he was aware that things could have been done differently. I just feel that that's missing from this report.
Okay. So yes, you've made your observation there. So is there any other comments? Okay, so I'll ask for agreement for the
Chair, could I just
go on, Stuart.
Could I just point out that on 3.4 on page 31, the bottom sentence of that paragraph says, however, members could now be reassured that a mechanism was in place to prevent it happening again. Now, can I say this I'm amazed that it ever could happen. And that is the, it says at the beginning of that paragraph, the panel took the view that there was a fault line that ran through the project between the premise of the scheme, that is agreeing a lease when it thought the property would be owned by the council, and the lack of governance that allowed this to happen. I just find it amazing that there was a lack of governance that led this failure to happen. And you know, can I compliment the committee on just doing the work they have done? So and that this should never happen again. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Stuart. Yeah, the committee did do a robust job on that, ably chaired by Grant, and the recommendations have been incorporated by, as you know, by Cabinet and Council. And thank you for your comments there, Stuart. Appreciated.
Councillor Bullman has raised a hand, and also Emma Hodds wants to come in.
Okay. Peter, you was also on the committee as well.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, are we not in danger of reviewing the whole project again? I know what people have said, but essentially those were the decisions we came to. I don't see any purpose in going over old ground, frankly.
Yeah, we're not actually doing that, Peter.
Well, it feels like it.
No, we're not. We've actually just said we need the report endorsed. Stuart's just said that you know, he commends the work that we've done. Sue's made her observations. You could make any observations you wanted about your role in it. And I've moved a couple of times to see now if we can move on to accepting the report. But before I carry on, Emma, if you would like to, I believe you want to say something, Emma?
Thank you, Chairman. Actually, all I was going to say was reiterate exactly what you've just said, to remind the panel that there were a raft of recommendations that came out probably over a year ago now, and those recommendations, as you said, Chair, were endorsed by Cabinet and are part of process now. So completely agree this should not have happened when it did, but we have put the mitigation in place. But I think you're right, the report needs to be noted. We can move on, Chairman.
Yeah, okay. Moving to recommendation 7.1, just popping this for the third time. So can we agree to the recommendation under 7.1, please, committee? Unless somebody puts up their hand and says they're objecting, then we'll take that as unanimous. Yeah, thank you, Stuart. And yeah, okay.
That's unanimous then.
Thank you. Right, moving on to item 9, scrutiny of Cabinet, page 33, and Sarah is going to present this. Fire away, Sarah.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. So this item has arisen due to comments that were made at a previous meeting of the committee. As you'll see on page 34, I was tasked to provide some statistics of recommendations made by the committee which had been accepted by Cabinet over the last 5 years. You've got those statistics there in front of you at the bottom of 34 on top of page 35. In summary, of the 269 decisions made by Cabinet over the past 5 years, only one of the 5 recommendations was agreed by Cabinet. For last year, just putting that into context, we had 51 decisions. Committee made 7 recommendations and 1 was agreed by Cabinet. So the statistics there are for you to look at, and really it's for committee to decide how it wishes to progress and proceed with scrutiny in the future. We've given some options in 4.1. These are just suggestions. It could be that at the moment scrutiny looks at every Cabinet item. It could be an option that maybe you pick 1 or 2, Chairman or Vice Chairman could pick 1 or 2 items that it wishes the committee to focus on in particular. And then balance that with maybe looking at carrying out a review the length of time after Cabinet decisions have been taken, say 6 or 12 months. So you're looking at monitoring effectiveness of maybe new policies or items which have been made. So really it's open to the committee how it wishes to progress with scrutiny. I'll leave it there for you, Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Just before I open it up to the committee, as the committee will recall, Sarah's made a reference to page 34 on summary at the meeting on the 17th, which was endorsed by all the committee at that point to seek these stats. And also there's the comments there by the Vice Chair as well. The role of ONS and scrutiny and the way it's developed within Broadland, it does develop slightly different in some councils. They do vary a bit, particularly in single tier authorities, is of course, as the regs and regs say in relation to overview and scrutiny of the executive, holding it to account, but working with the executive as well to form better decisions, to improve the service, and also in terms of public's views and outside partners as well. It's a very important function. To my mind, when we've got the officers that are giving reports to Cabinet, they also need to give the reports to scrutiny as well, and that we do need to overview and scrutinise those, because even I've, in my lifetime, has been on ONS, I do remember a couple of reports where there was some noting recommendations, and out of a couple of questions, something was flagged up actually, which was picked up in Cabinet in a kind of way that wasn't in terms of an amendment. So sometimes, you know, what's not obvious only becomes obvious after scrutiny. So I don't believe that it is my role or the chairman's role to try to sift out on the cabinet agenda, 1 or 2 items that then only is put before the committee. I believe that is not wrong. That is wrong, and it is not commensurate with how the regs are laid out, in my view, and therefore I personally wouldn't agree to do that. The vice chair can speak for himself as well. I mean, on that basis, my view would be that I would be proposing that 6.1 is rejected, because there's an inference back to 4.1. Sarah, you're right to point out 4.1. Thank you for that. And I believe we already do focus in. If you go to the amount of decisions the Cabinet's taken, 269, you'll see that we've got 59 over the 5-year period where we had a variance or recommendation. The 269, after scrutiny, we actually agreed to recommend. So we're already, when we're scrutinising, shifting that down through that scrutiny process, and only focusing in, I believe, on what is relevant and critical, and that's reflecting the fact that there actually are 59. So I think that we need to proceed and carry on the way we are. We do need to scrutinise the cabinet papers to ensure that nothing is missed, and to make sure, as we said in our annual report, we are doing what we're saying we're doing in the annual report. And that would be my view, Chair. Sarah. And as I said, the Vice Chair can also speak for himself, but I personally would not wish to sift out cabinet reports and then only bring those to the committee. I believe it's the committee's business to review what it wants to review in terms of cabinet reports, and have it done in a normal way. So I'll now open it up. Who would like to contribute?
Councillor Adams has his hand up.
Councillor Adams.
Grant and Councillor Naden second.
So Tony first, then Grant.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I fully support everything you say, and I think we're doing the job that we are being appointed to do, and it certainly ties in with the scrutiny guidance, statutory guidance, which has been issued by government, stated statutory guidance on overview and scrutiny committees, and that certainly talks about the statutory powers we have to scrutinise decisions the executive is planning to take. I've been around, as you know, quite a long time, and I've sometimes found that what is the most innocuous looking paper, when you start delving in, has quite significant ramifications. And I agree with Steve. I don't think it is my job either to tell you as members, well, this is all we're going to look at today. So therefore, Steve has proposed that we delete 6.1 in its entirety. And Chairman, I'm quite happy to second your proposal that we do delete that particular paragraph, and that we continue doing exactly what we're doing now, because I think we're doing a jolly good job all the way around. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Tony. Grant.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I also totally endorse the comments that you've made, and also those comments made by Tony. Just one thing first, and this is possibly for Sarah. On the page, scrutiny of cabinet report author, portfolio holder is the leader of the council, and of course the chairman of the cabinet. And I would have thought that if we're going to have this as a discussion item, that it should be all, because it affects basically the entire cabinet, rather than just the policy team. So that's just one comment that I would like to make. The other comment that I would like to make also is that when we look at the 5-year stats, it reflects a very different picture since we had a change in leadership at the council. Previously, the proportion of rejections by cabinet is far higher than under the current leadership, which is in the case of 2018-19, only one was rejected out of 46. And in the current, well, the previous financial year, 7 out of 51 was rejected, and 1 was actually accepted, which is a very pleasing comment to see. Well, a pleasing statistic to see. So yes, I totally endorse, and if I could third that recommendation to that made by the chairman, I would certainly do that. So thank you.
Thank you, John. Any other committee members?
Councillor Shaw, and then Councillor Hartley, and then Councillor Beadle.
Shall I just respond to the comment about the portfolio holder, Chairman?
Yes.
It's just to clarify that the scrutiny function falls within the policy portfolio holder. So it's just looking at the scrutiny function. It's not looking at all of the services that you scrutinise, which I appreciate would be all portfolio holders.
Yeah, it's just that when I read that, I thought, well, it's like the cow telling the farmer how to milk it.
Okay, so okay, so we've got. I believe the order was Linda.
Councillor Shaw, Councillor Hartley, Councillor Beadle.
Yeah. Okay. Nigel, would you like to fire away there?
Yeah, there's just one point that I always find a little bit well, miffed about. We don't get reasons for the rejections on the reports. It would be nice to see why they're rejected or why they're accepted, quite honestly, and that's lacking.
Thanks, Nigel. I'll come back on that as well in a little while. Natasha, would you like to make a contribution?
Thank you, Chair. Just a very quick comment. I'd like to remind everyone that this is overview and scrutiny, not just scrutiny. I think it's really important that we do remember our role as observing things in a broader sense, not just scrutinising decisions. That's all I had to say on the matter.
Thank you, Natasha. Stuart?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I agree with other people's sentiments, but also I'm sure the Cabinet and others take into account that if they know the decision, the recommendations are going to go through overview and scrutiny, they are likely to put more effort into actually justifying their actions. So there is actually a benefit there in that the officers and the Cabinet are actually going to try and second guess, for want of a better way of putting it, what overview and scrutiny are likely to say and want changed. Thank you, Chair.
That's fact, Stuart. That's a really relevant point, because without it, then of course you're not actually looking at, oh, hang on a second, have we actually covered that? And I think that's a very relevant point, actually. And anyone else? Are you picking up anybody, Linda?
No, can't see anyone.
Okie dokie. Okay, so there is a proposal from myself, seconded by Tony, that we sorry, I'll just get back to the recommendation.
That's fine. Well, Chairman, if I just come in, the committee has requested a review how it carries out its role in terms of scrutinising the Cabinet. You have done that review, so your conclusion is to continue with the current practice, I'd assume.
I would completely agree, Sarah. That's the point I was just going to come in on. That. Yeah, you've asked to review it, you've reviewed it. Yeah, very, very spot on point, Sarah, exactly. And your conclusion is that you wish to carry on as you are, I would suggest, from what's been said.
Yes, so this is what I'm saying. 6.1 needs to change to now.
Chairman, if I may, I've got that the committee will continue with its current arrangements for the scrutiny of the Cabinet agenda.
Yes, thank you. Yes, so that is actually the proposal. That's that you know, Tony's also seconding there, and I'd like to put that to the vote, and then I'd like to come also back onto the stats after that. So could we all agree that, please, committee? Any objections?
To be unanimous.
Thank you. So now, just coming back onto the stats, I do think that having looked at the stats, putting again an overview and scrutiny head on to this, I think that we need some further drilling into scrutiny term, drilling into those 59 decisions that were rejected, and we could do that. We could set up a small working time and task, certainly myself and the vice chair involved with that, to just drill into what they actually were, and then to kind of see if there's a constructive view we could take about what actually occurred. And picking up on Nigel's point, actually, because and it's a point I've raised for years as well, we're not getting adequate response back in terms of the why. And I think that's healthy to have, because without it, you could actually have a position where recommendations going forward, the cabinet may not be giving any due consideration, and there's no feedback. When you look at the regs, what we're looking at is an interface between O&S, myself as chair going to cabinet, and sometimes the recommendations could be kind of taken on board but varied once we're in a debate with the cabinet and officers. So that's the healthy part of O&S, and not having kind of feedback on that is not good process. So I think I'm going to suggest that myself, chair, and vice chair, and maybe a couple of others, just take the time out to drill into the actual decisions, to see what we can come back to the committee on, and talking with, of course, Emma and the administration as well, and possibly the executive, which the regs point us to, in terms of making that better for the future. So I'd like to propose that as well, because it does need some drilling into, I think, to see what we can do to improve that with the cabinet. So I'd also like to propose that as well, actually, and that we put that on the work programme.
Yeah, I'll second that, Chairman.
I was just waiting for Emma to come in as well, Tony. Go ahead, Emma.
Yeah, we didn't want to let you down on that point, Steve. Yeah. I know because we've talked about this particularly on the back of the cabinet last time round, didn't we? Because there was, we both felt there was some quite robust discussion in terms of what was said as overview and scrutiny. I think if you do want to drill down, I wouldn't suggest going back too far, because I don't want you to get swamped into past decisions. I would keep it very probably focused on when we had 51, didn't we, in 1920. So I think that would probably be your focus. I wouldn't suggest going back further than that. But I think we also need to be mindful that this needs to be a relationship between overview and scrutiny, and there's probably some ways in which, because I know, Steve, we've talked about in terms of, obviously you and Tony go to cabinet, and it's how we potentially do that feedback loop through back to the committee, and how we, so I don't want to make it an industry because we're all very busy people, but at the same time, we've talked about, haven't we, at the next overview and scrutiny, having you giving that feedback from cabinet in terms of what was taken forward at overview and scrutiny. Yeah. So I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I don't want to create an industry either, when actually some of the things that we've already talked about would be some quite quick wins, and it will fully involve the committee, and the committee will then have that full awareness of the discussion around what overview and scrutiny proposed to cabinet, and how that discussion went.
Yeah, because at the last cabinet meeting, I did feel a slight difference, I must say, and there was more of a debate, and in terms of recommendations as well. And we got one through, and I'd say half of one was varied as well, and I did feel a bit of a change there. There has been representations being made, as you say, Emma, from myself and possibly yourself as well. I do feel that we do need to drill in a bit, and I take your point about not going back too far. We could certainly take the that year's the 51 and look at those. And as I said, myself, vice chair, or indeed just myself and the vice chair actually do that bit of lifting with an officer, drill into what they are. We can get the actual papers from Sarah and just drill in a bit, and then possibly have a discussion with the executive, you know, the leader, in terms of a way forward, in terms of better, you know, communication, and also doing what we're supposed to be doing, where the scrutiny is there to actually, you know, assist the council, and we're not there as an obstruction, so to speak. And it may just do us all some good. So yeah,
Steve,
go on,
can I come back in again? I think before pre-COVID as well, myself, you as chair and Sean as leader were starting to have that conversation, weren't we, in terms of striving for excellence in overview and scrutiny and how we could get there. And this, to me, feels like a really good opportunity to kind of kick that work off again. We'd kind of got to the point where we had some joint statements, and we knew kind of what that was going to look like. So I'm happy to work with you and the leader and Sarah as well, to start progressing that through, so we can really start to shape it. And I think there's some good work that could come out of that. So I'm happy to take that away as an action, Steve, and work on that with you.
Okay. So could the committee endorse that myself and the vice chair we want to do some drilling? We can have Sarah give us some paperwork on that as well. Then take up the points that we were just talking about with yourself, Emma, and then accordingly, you know, come back to the committee in terms of progress around that. And picking up on Nigel's point, which is absolutely correct. He's been on for years, Nigel, and we get that better feedback coming back. Could we endorse that committee? Any objections? No objections? Okay. James, I can't see everybody. Are we okay?
No, that looks to be unanimous.
Right, thank you.
Councillor Lurden has his hand raised, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Grant. Go.
Yeah, no problem. I don't have any objections. But it's just one comment about all of that, is that I wonder whether the cabinet papers, or sorry, the cabinet minutes, or the decisions list, one of those two, I would suggest more the minutes, could reflect the reasons for disagreeing, rejecting, or whatever, or varying from a recommendation by overview and scrutiny. I just wondered whether that wouldn't be a possibility as well for the two of you to consider.
Yeah, and you're right, Ron. This is part of the problem. When you look at the decision list, and this is what I've seen years, and I've just looked at the one that's just gone, and I look at that, you then go, and it's also something I was talking to Emma about, when you then go to, if you just look at that, it's done in a very concise, tight way, and it's not necessarily reflecting that decisioning and reasoning for it. It's almost like when we've got a recommendation in there, we also need a paragraph going through what happened, kind of an extract from a minute, but it reflects it better. And I've seen in other authorities that ONS, when that occurs with the executive, I've seen it reflected in that way, some other authorities, and it makes a hell of a difference. It shows some real working together. If you haven't got that, it also means that sometimes, of course, the cabinet thinks, well, they don't have to address it, so therefore they don't do it. If they know there's also reasoning got to be given as well in some text, it helps with the whole process. So I totally agree with you, Grant. Okie dokie. So thanks for that added comment there, Grant, because we have already agreed that. And if we could now move on to item 10, overview and scrutiny work programme. I think, Sarah, you're kicking off on this, aren't you?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just to introduce, this is following discussions with yourself and the Vice Chairman. We have updated the work programme. We've put some dates where we know items can be taken. So I don't know if you just want to, I'll just go through a couple of items. So obviously the annual report where we've got the comment. I've added a column in there called comments, so we know that that item is on track. So that's been taken at today's committee. The staff turnover item is scheduled to go to your next main meeting, which is in September. I've made contact with the lead officer for that to be progressed, so I just need to have an update on that just to make sure we're ready to go to committee in September. Over the page, the item for broadband, for those members who maybe were watching the cabinet meeting, you'll have noted that the portfolio holder for economic success referred to Director of Better Broadband being invited to the ESP meeting on the 22nd of July. So my suggestion there would be perhaps for that invitation to be extended to ONS members. So rather than, invite them to come to ONS separately, it would be better if the ONS committee were invited to attend the Economic Success Panel meeting to hear what they have to say. And then depending on the outcome of that, that could actually be just monitored on the work programme. So it doesn't need to be on there as a specific item to be brought forward at this stage. Dropping down, the next item which we've managed to progress is the water supply management climate change. Again, I've made contact with the officer for that function, and you'll see there's quite actually a comprehensive briefing paper at the end of your agenda. If members have had an opportunity to look through that, it could be that that has actually addressed lots of the issues which the committee may have had concerns about. So when we get into the discussion, members may decide, well, actually, they have no further concerns regarding that item, and that item could perhaps potentially come off the work programme. The next couple of items, housing allocations policy and affordable housing provision. I think I said previously that those items are actually going to be looked at by officers anyway as part of the collaborative working. So it could be that those will be due to come to scrutiny via a cabinet report. So they could still remain on the work programme, but it could be that it's just dealt with via a different way. And the affordable housing provision I've penciled in for November. So it's just worth noting on the meeting dates that you have. We've got 8th of September, 17th of November, 27th of January and 30th of March. You just need to be mindful that the work programme is not too many items on the work programme that can't be progressed through your year. And then just the next item about the time and task, the ongoing apprenticeships time and task limited panel. Again, I've put some explanatory notes in the comments column just to explain why there has been a delay in that starting. And actually now, again, I've made contact with the relevant officer, and now would not actually be a good time to pick that one up for the reasons given there on page 39. Just over the page on page 40, it's just flagging up because I know this is a particular favourite of yours, is the budget workshop, and again that's scheduled for October. So that's just an overview of the work programme. If members wanted to open the discussion, thank you.
Okie dokie. The way we usually do this, members, is we go to the so we go to the table, just go through the items, and we pick it up as we go. So on page 37, as you're going through the topics there, any comments?
Councillor Erdin has his hand raised.
Grant?
Thank you, Chairman. Right at the top, Overview and Scrutiny Work Committee Programme 2012-0 to 21. Just needs to be corrected.
Yes, apologies, that's a typo.
Okay, so on that page, we've got performance reports going right the way through to future topics of scrutiny. Any comments? No, we'll move on then.
Yes, Chair.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, just wondering, the frequency of the meetings seems to have gone down. Is that my imagination, or do we normally have meetings every other month?
The frequency is as has always been. We didn't amend the frequency of meetings. That is as always has been.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
It's every other month, Sue, because we also have the cabinet.
Right.
So we do two things. We do cabinet and then we do our own. So it's always every other month. It's impossible to handle any other way.
Okay, thank you.
Page 38.
Councillor Adams has his hand up.
Tony? Hello, Tony?
Yeah, I'm here. Don't worry. Just unmuted myself. Yeah, it's basically, Chairman, we've got quite a few comments on the sort of briefing notes, because I've looked at it and it's full of wonderful airy ideas, but not very, very limited on substance. For example, it talks about that our region is going to be one of the fastest growing outside London, 200,000 new homes, which quite a few be in Broadland.
Sorry, could I just make a point? You are on water supply management.
Page 43 at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, and are you on water supply management and climate change?
Yeah, well, basically the whole briefing report, Steve, because I don't think it says supply and demand, while population is expected to rise by 1 million, but the water is going to go down. So to me, all right, fine, but I can't see anything in here as how that is going to be addressed. It talks about strategy plans, make the east of England resilient to drought and flooding. Well, nothing about how that's going to be achieved. Enable sustainable and economic and housing growth. Nothing about how they intend to achieve that. Work with others to achieve a significant improvement on ecological quality across our catchments. Well, what others? There's no mention in there what others that we're intending to work with, and how are they going to achieve a net zero carbon business by 2030? Nothing on there at all. The bit that intrigues me, I have to say, is on page 44, and it starts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about eight down. It says in our latest 25-year water resources management plan, we proposed a 500-kilometre series of interconnecting pipelines running from Lincolnshire, where there is a surplus of water, to Cambridgeshire, Suffolk and Essex. Not a mention about Norfolk. So what about poor old Norfolk? We seem to be missing out on that one altogether. So again, I'd like to question Anglian Water. Well, all right, you're doing all this wonderful thing for 3 of our counties, but what about the driest county in Great Britain, and also probably drier than the Sahara Desert in places? Nothing there again. You come on to actions include water recycling long-term plan. How are you going to what is it that they're proposing to do? Sewer design. Well, how are you going to redesign the sewers? Behaviour change, which I think is going to be the most difficult. How are you going to propose managing behaviour change by residents? Are you just going to limit them to how much water they can use in a day? Well, nothing. And as I said, it's full of action plans, but no anything there whatsoever about how they are going about achieving this. So I don't agree, I'm afraid, unfortunately, Sarah, with you that this covers the topics. And again, I still feel that these are the sorts of questions that need to be answered by Anglian Water. Like I know that there has been talk for some time now about having a dam somewhere in Norfolk. Is that still on the horizon, or has that been scrapped? And how are they going to actually manage this? Because it's full of wonderful ideas and marvelous things, but no real substance, Chairman. I think that's all that's the end of my rant, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. There's a lot in there. I don't know if you want to come back on that, Zara, before anybody else does, or make any other comments from anybody else on
Not
this?
really, no. I say that water is not my specialism, hence I went to the appropriate officer, explained that the item was on your work programme and asked, you know, for some information which could help, because with all the topics which are on the work programme, when you look at the template about putting an item on the work programme, it's all about focusing the item and making sure there are outcomes. So what I wanted to do was sort of give you some direction. So we've got all the information, it's just picking through that and making sure when we do go to Anglian Water and ask them to come along, we've actually got a set, you know, it's not just random, there are particular topics and areas that you want to investigate and there's a focus to it and an outcome, because it's all very well inviting them in and we say, well, that was very interesting, thank you. But, you know, nothing comes of it.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to say.
Councillor Kelly has got a question.
Yes, in regard to Tony's comments, we've got 4 members of the committee here who are actually board members of Norfolk Rivers and the Broads Rivers. They're the ones who are right at the front end of all of the water management and the dealings with Anglia, etc. Now, Phil Calamine, who's the Chief Executive Officer, who does a lot of dealings with us as members, is more than welcome for these officers to talk to us about the actual flooding and that lot right at the pointy end. So to alleviate sort of Tony's worries and the rest of it, I think we should actually endorse Phil's ability to get his officers to come and actually talk to this committee and give it for the views of the interaction between the Environment Agency and all the other agencies actually working on the ground with all of this, with the ecological and the water supplies, because they're the one actually who you'd actually be able to talk to and who would come and talk to the committee rather than send notes and massive loads of hyperlinks.
Can I just ask clarification, Kelly? The person that you're referring to, is that an Anglian Water employee?
No. He is the Water Management Agency, which does the whole of Lincolnshire and Norfolk and even leading down into Essex through Suffolk now. You've got about nearly 1 million hectares that they're responsible for, and they are water management. You know, that's their business based in Kings Lane. And we pay, as a council, we pay a couple of $100,000 a year towards them. So, you know, we have big dealings with them and, you know, they're accountable for us and we are to them about all of these actions of which, you know, Anglia Water is the overseer of certain part of it. But the actual dealings with the Environment Agency and RSPB and all the rest of it for the environment section and the flooding and the drainage of all the Broads, etc., is all their responsibilities. And that's what we're paying as a council towards. So I think we should have, you know, their views on where things are. I met a lot of them at the ADA conference in Westminster in November, where a couple of the members went. We have dealings with them all the time. And, you know, like I said, with 4 of this committee who are actually members of these 2 boards. So I think we should be looking for some advice and also, you know, question them in front of us as a video conference. And Phil Camomile is the Chief Executive Officer.
Emma wants to come in.
I've got a suggestion in a moment. Is there anybody else?
Emma Hodds wants to come in.
Emma?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting listening to this because Councillor Kelly has referred to members that are on boards and have a lot of information that actually would be useful for this. I think I just want to remind members of Zara's really valid point on this. We're in danger of growing something here, and I just think that's where we need to make sure we get the topic right, so that we're really clear on the objectives of the review that we want to do and the outcomes that we're looking for, so that it doesn't grow like Topsy. So just think we just need to be really clear if what we've got on the work programme, and Steve, I've spoken to you about this before, just being really clear about what it is we're trying to achieve, so that when we're asking someone like Anglian Water or whomever it is to come in, they're really clear what they're coming in and talking to you about, because the last thing you want them to come in and talk to you and they've missed the mark, and then we've all lost the opportunity there. So just think we just need to probably hone down on some of these a little bit. And again, I'm happy to work with Sarah and yourself, Steve, just really looking at the objectives on the work programme and what the outcomes are we're trying to achieve.
Well, yeah, on this one here, on the specific one, water supply management, climate change, picking up on Tony's point, picking up also on the report we've got here, and I'm also listening to Kenny as well. When you go to what, and again, I think Emma, you're looking at this as well, what it's actually talking about here is Anglian Water to be invited to attend the meeting, to investigate how water is being managed, direct measures, blah, blah, blah. Now, one way we've dealt with this before, and going back to Stacey's time as well, we had a couple of issues like this. One was on the housing suppliers, and when we went to an ONS, said yes, we want to review with the housing associations their supply plus also their management. And then what we actually did, we set up initially a time and task. Now the time and task, which I was always on as chair anyway, its first role and function was to actually drill in, which you can't do at an ONS meeting, and I think it's going to be very difficult to do that today at ONS. But what we could do is agree to set up that time and task, and really that meeting is about meeting with Sarah, meeting with whoever else is officers first of all, to then go, okay, let's just define, if we get them in, what would our questions actually be? We've done this before, we did it on 2 items before, going back 2014. And when we went into time and task, when we worked it through, we actually came back out of that and went, do you know what? There isn't a relevance to this. And then on another one, we did. So we could do that, and the time and task isn't necessarily saying we're going to invite these people to time and task. The simple role is to do what Emma's just talking about, but to drill in initially and say, actually, is this, can we do this? Would these be the questions? Unless we can come up with the relevant questions and it's pointed, then you don't do it. So I'm going to suggest, picking up all the points that have been made here, and Emma's as well, that we do have a time task to look initially at how the relevance and how we could question, and if we want to form questions, again, taking on board this report we've got as well, and also Ken's point, and then just come back to next ONS meeting, we report from the time and task. Yeah, you know what, we've actually been able to drill this down to 2 or 3 things. We want to call them in on that. Or do you know what, we've actually looked down here, there's another mechanism for dealing with it. And I'll recommend actually, you know, that's the way forward. And I suggest that Ken, and I suggest that Tony obviously come onto that time and task with himself, plus 2 other members. And that would be the remit of it, to look at the terms and reference. Is it actually appropriate? Can we proceed? And then come back to the overview scrutiny committee, because we can't do it today. There's just too much. There's just too. We can't do that, you know.
Chair, can I ask a question on that?
Yeah.
So we've got on the work programme, we've got a few items that have got topic, outcomes and objectives. And I do think what you're saying is a good idea, because it will actually really start to focus what we're looking at. I just wonder whether almost broaden slightly the remit of that time and task panel, just to work through each of those items on the work programme that you've got on there, so we can have a really good, thorough kind of fresh look at everything, and a really good debate about actually those items that are on there. What are we trying to achieve? What are we looking for? Is it covered elsewhere? Can we join up with the policy committee? I just think it would be a really good idea, because some of those have been kicking around for a while, and I just think it would be a good idea to really focus us on the work programme.
Yeah, well, we're going through the work programme now, and so it's going through page by page. We've got to this page 38. We've already covered the other page. So on page 38, the one item that's been pulled up here is the water supply management, where we had this further paper on. What I'd like to do on this occasion, to suck this and see actually, is just retain this Emma on the water supply one. I think that would be enough actually for that time I was just to meet on. And then the others here, we can just review back on the next ONS meeting, you know, as we move forward. We can keep them on, and then you know, keep reviewing as we go, but keep them on as we've got them. We did prioritise some dates, Sarah, didn't we? Around a couple of them. We did, yeah. I mean, this was just me sort of picking them up. The staff turnover one is scheduled to go to in the September meeting, because that was when I say fairly easy. It's just looking at the officer to provide some statistics, and it doesn't involve any external agencies coming in. So that was why that one was sort of put as one of your first items. And again, with the water supply one, I made contact with the officer because she came back so quickly. It was just one that I've picked up on. We haven't actually got a date for that one. So it's saying it's just need to be conscious that they said there is a lot on the work programme for you to get through, and the number of meetings that you've got. So it's just being conscious that. Yeah, the other thing about as well, if you go through each year on ONS going back over time, and from my original time on it as well, this is consistent. You've got them on there. You've rationalised down already, but I've never known an ONS work programme that just didn't get carried forward to the next year, because there just isn't enough time on the bi-monthly basis to do it. Yeah, you don't want to be overviewing scrutiny willy-nilly, but I've never known a year where some didn't actually get carried forward to next year. But it's just officers need to be clear which ones you're happy for to be carried forward and which ones that you priority in terms of timing. Yeah. So we've got that scheduled for September, and then October we've got the your October meeting is just your pre-cabinet meeting. Pre-cabinet one, so your next, what I call ordinary scrutiny, is 8th of September, then the 17th of November. 17th of November, yeah, okay. Right, so I'm just looking at what else we've got in-house here, because
could I make a comment, Chairman?
Yeah.
3 of the items on page 38, which is the bottom 3, the housing allocations, affordable housing, etc., undertake joint scrutiny. We're actually doing that at present. So I'm a member of the joint working committee with that. In fact, we're just going through that at the present moment. And these are already being taken care of because we're actually holding the meetings for this joint council. So there's 3 items there that really we can say there's going to be an outcome at the end of it, because they've already meeting and the recommendations are actually near enough ready to come forward. So you've got 3 items that near enough can be sort of comments is awaiting final report, and that's 3 of them that can be taken off.
I'm getting a bit confused there, Kenny.
Yeah.
What working party are you on?
Joint working with South Norfolk for affordable housing and housing provisions and housing allocations. So that's been going on for a fair while and still ongoing. So we're just waiting for the final outcomes of what's going to come from there. And I gather Emma's got some comment to make on that.
Yeah, just on that, because I can see you looking puzzled, Steve. It is a cross-party. Yeah, it is a cross-party group. It was set up similarly, like the waste group has been set up. Right. So that's working through. It's not making any decisions, but it's looking at the systems that we've got in place, the policy, how that would work through, and that working group will then take that through due process. So I think what Ken's saying is those things are being looked at as part of that working group. And I think probably what would be good to do with those three is see what comes out of that working group to avoid that duplication, and then that may steer further than what overview and scrutiny would want to then focus in on what comes out of that working group.
Could I just ask clarification? Where is this publicised that there's this working group?
So it's in, I mean, it's an informal working group that was set up, but I haven't been closer to this one. I've been closer to the waste one, but it was set up with cross-party representation to do some of the initial, like Ken said, some of the initial discussions. What does it look like? What do each council currently do? What's best out there, to kind of say that members are very much working with officers in terms of what that looks like going forward. But as I say, it's not a decision-making group. It's not, you know, they can't make decisions, but it will hopefully help to kind of shape what that looks like going forwards.
Yeah, I'm just really a little bit concerned at the moment, because I'm aware of the waste working party, which was well publicised under the panel, the environmental excellence. So there was a discussion on there. It came out. It was public information, setting up a working party, and it was cross-party. And you know, there's a Lib Dem on from here, there's a Lib Dem on from South North, etc. I'm just unaware of this. I don't know if any other members are aware of that. Was this set up under place shaping, or?
I can't honestly, Steve, I can't remember the detail. What I'll do is I'll go and have a chat with the lead officers and the members and ping round an email to all of overview and scrutiny just to give you clarity around how that was set up. I think it's very early days on that group. I think it's one that's only recently been set up, but I'm talking off the top of my head now, which is always quite dangerous. So can I take away an action just to get some more information for you on that, and I'll send that round. Is that okay?
I'm not sure. Can I just say that we've been going for about 3 months, and near as damn it, we're having sometimes, as it will be for July, there's be at least 3 meetings during July with presentations from both councils, the officers.
Cross party. Can you tell me who's there from my party?
I'm trying to think. Can't think off the top of my head.
I'll find out, Steve. What I'll do is I'll send round all this information to everybody so you can have oversight of it.
Okay, Tony wishes to come in.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I am quite concerned about this, because to me, this seems to be bypassing what this overview and scrutiny committee decided on what the way forward was, which was in fact to undertake a joint scrutiny with South Norfolk Council on both the housing allocations and affordable housing provision. Now that seems to have been completely ignored, by whom I do not know, in favour of having this informal sort of chatting committee looking at these 2 items. I'm sorry, that goes completely against what this overview and scrutiny decided. And if there is a need for such a panel, then such a panel should have been drawn from this overview and scrutiny committee and from South Norfolk overview and scrutiny committee to joint scrutinise it, which would have been open to the public, which this now apparently isn't. And as I said, I think this is probably not deliberate. I'm not saying for one moment, but it certainly to me is undermining the role that overview and scrutiny wish to take on this. Thank you, Chairman.
Chair, can I come in on that point, because I think we're using some quite dangerous language here when we need to actually get to the. I've said I'll go away and I'll let the committee know exactly why this panel was set up and in what way, so that you can see the oversight of that. I think we need, we just need to be very careful what we're saying and the implications of what we're saying. I don't think anything's been done to undermine anybody. I'd be very surprised and very disappointed if that was the case. But as I said, let me just do. So I know Sue, you want to come in.
Thank you.
I just think I need to kind of give you the detail, because we're working on assumptions, and that's always a very dangerous position to be in. Let me go away and do some digging for you on this one.
Okay. Can I come in there, please?
Do come in, yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't accept that it's a case of going away and finding out. Please, could you find out in the next 10 minutes during this meeting? Surely you can contact somebody and find out. It's a very important matter.
I'd just like to come in on that. We're all extremely busy at the moment with COVID, and being able to get a hold of officers within the space of 10 minutes isn't as easy as it sounds. I'm happy, Chair, if you want me to leave this meeting and go away and find out what's going on, if that's what you'd like me to go and do, but I can't guarantee I can get a hold of an officer in 10 minutes.
I would appreciate that, Emma, but I understand if you come back and say, look, I've not been able to get hold of the officer. I would appreciate if you could try, and if you come, you know, in 10 minutes, come back, and if you can't, you can't.
Okay, Leah, I'm now off. If you could let me back in later.
Thank you, Emma. And you know, Emma, what's going on. There's also other issues going on now as well, because I'm not aware of this as a councillor even, let alone the ONS viewpoint about this. And we've got informal working parties now going on something that I don't know anything about whatsoever, even as a councillor, let alone an ONS member. And
Okay.
I'm pretty concerned about it, Kenny, to be honest with you. You know.
Right, let me go and see what I can find. I'll be back.
Thanks, Emma. Should we take can we take a, it might make sense actually to take a comfort break. Does that make sense while Emma's doing that? Yeah, okie dokie.
How long?
Well, we come back in 5 minutes. You said 10 minutes, yeah?
Yep, 11:45, yeah.
Okie dokie. All right. Thanks.
Steve.
Hi.
You were asking who was represented on the joint working group from your group, and it's Councillor Dave Thomas.
Is it?
Yes.
It's interesting. Yeah, so I've asked Emma, was this, see, when you look at the waste contract, you know, that was dealt with under the panel, the environmental panel, and references made to that. And then, you know, contact was made with myself as well, cross-party. But I'm not sure where this was publicised. Yeah.
Can I just...
you on place shaping, Ken?
Sorry?
You on the place shaping panel?
No, I'm on the joint member working group.
Yeah, but are you on the
No.
place shaping panel as well? Okay.
It was gone through wellbeing panel by the looks of it on the 20th of February.
Wellbeing panel.
Yeah, can I just quote you from what we've got here? It was set up by both councils as workshops. There was a draft report prepared for both councils by Campbell Tickle, an independent, world famous organisation about housing. And the details finding from this reviews and service user and stakeholder engagement and proposed future direction to meet demand through an accommodation pathway model. And that's the remit that we were given. And like I say, I've attended quite a number of workshops with senior officers from both councils of the direction, and also review the report from Campbell Tickle. So that just gives you a background of what's going on at the moment.
No, I was just asking, are you on the wellbeing panel?
No. Natasha's waving her hand.
Ah, Natasha. Hello.
Hello. Yeah, I'm on the wellbeing panel. This is coming back to me now. I remember this coming up after we had a presentation about homelessness figures and all that kind of thing. And the chair of the panel then suggested this cross-party working group. I didn't think it was an official group of any kind. And I raised the question at the time of, with it being a group, not a committee, how do we make sure there is cross-party involvement? And that's when the chair of that nominated somebody in particular who they wanted because of their level of expertise, and also asked Dave as well. Naturally, I piped up, hello, what about the Labour group? And it was, well, you know, it doesn't have to be Widdicombe. We have other people who aren't just the Conservatives, so that's okay. And it's not okay. And it seems to be run in a different way to how I thought it was. I thought it was just a little bit of a chat, and I directed Dave to Labour representatives on Norwich City Council, who I knew were the cabinet members that covered housing, just to make sure that it truly was broad, because of how homelessness refers, you know, from one council to the next, to make sure that they're getting that input as well, because that was the only way Labour voices were going to be heard as well. But how this is now being presented isn't how I thought it was at the wellbeing panel. That's why when Ken first talked about this group, it didn't click in my head at all. It was the same thing that was presented at wellbeing. It's only now when you met Dave, as I was sat next to him at that meeting, it's now dawning on me that, oh yes, and I remember then texting him who were the portfolio holders at Norwich City Council for homelessness and housing. So a bit weird.
Thank you, Natasha. Sue, did you want to say something? Sue Prusen?
No, it's just that I'm on the same committee as well. I'm on wellbeing, and it's sort of in the back of my mind, Natasha, just as it is in yours. But you've got a far clearer recollection, but you're bringing it back to me.
Thank you.
Councillor Holland, Eve wants to speak.
Yes, hello. I'm slightly concerned about this because I've not heard anything about this at all. And well, I'm slightly also concerned that it's an informal working group that is apparently has the potential to knock off something from our work programme. And I'm afraid I think this is almost a governance issue here. I would like to raise that point.
The other thing about working group, or whatever the term, terms and reference, I don't know whether there's any written terms and reference for the group. Ken, perhaps you could also
remember. All it's classed as a joint member working group workshops, and that's what we're undertaking at the moment. And I mean, you're getting attended by senior directors of our council, because Jamie Sutterby is there. You've got Richard Dunshire, quite a lot. And from South Norfolk, there's quite senior portfolio holders and officers from there as well, as all the other groups represented. And this is the workshops that we get presented with nearly every 2 weeks. And that's what they're going through, because like I said, Campbell Tickle, who have been commissioned by both councils, have published a report, or publishing, for recommendations about housing allocations, housing of the homeless, etc., and affordable housing. And that's what's being examined at the moment, and it's still ongoing. In fact, I think I've got one on Wednesday.
And I've not seen any minutes published, Ken. There's no minutes.
No.
Can I just come
basically
in?
It's the workshops that, you know, that are presented to us by senior officers and also consultants.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Is this on Zoom? I take it it's not in person.
It's this is Zoom conference.
Okay, so has it been recorded?
Because we can't. I haven't got a clue. You would have to ask. You would have to ask. Like I say, there's it probably wouldn't be on Zoom, because of the fact that there's a lot of confidential information being presented. So a lot of it would be in pink anyway, because of the implications of what. Because
I meant,
like I said, yeah.
For two reasons. One was, if it's been recorded, we could all watch it and catch up.
Yeah.
And the second reason would be that we could be invited to observe, as councillors, all councillors could be invited to observe the proceedings, which would be of great interest to us all, I'm sure.
Absolutely. I could totally agree with you, Sue. Like I say, Jamie Sutterby, who's one of our directors, you know, he's on sits on the panel with us as well. And you've got, you know, Mike Pursehouse and quite a lot of and Councillor Fran Wymark is on it as well, and he's a portfolio holder. So you've got quite senior officers from both, and councillors from both councils on these.
Well, Fran Wymark is the chairman of the wellbeing panel, so I would hope he was there.
There you go.
But on the other hand, if you're talking about dealing with pink papers and things, that does seem a little bit.
Well, because a lot of it, especially with you know, the policies going forward with the lack, you know, for homeless and the rest of it. I mean, until it's determined what was going to be recommendations to the council, I would think a lot of this is probably ideal to be kept sort of at that level.
Maybe so, but it's quite serious stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it being pink papers, it allows people to perhaps air their views better, wider, which is good.
Yeah.
But pink papers don't exclude the rest of the council members.
No, but like I say, it's an informal joint working group. So the remit for that, you would have to discuss basically with probably Jamie Sutterby and, you know, the council leaders.
Can I just confirm, are we still just in an adjournment waiting for Emma to come back? We've not actually opened a meeting. That's fine. We're not in open session. Leah's not live streaming.
No, I guess that's
no, that's fine. I just wanted to be clear.
At that point,
the live stream is still on. It can't be turned off until the end of the meeting, so I wouldn't be able to start and stop the live stream.
Okay.
Oh right. Sorry, I thought that's what happened. Okay.
I just don't know if we're going to get any progression on this at the current time, whether we've almost come to the end of the meeting as well, whether we just ought to perhaps close the
there's a point I need as chair to kind
Okay.
of bring this to on this point, and it comes back to the point that Tony was making as well, which then led on to Ken, but I think we do need to come back to the point that Tony was making. I'm just going back to it again, the page in it, on the housing. Which page are we on now? Let me see.
It's on 38.
38.
Yeah,
So we've got 3 items on the work programme. Yeah.
We've got housing allocation policy.
Yeah.
Affordable housing provision.
Yes.
Affordable housing provision.
And also it's about, there's an addendum as well, which is part of the remit of that lot, is homelessness, which is very relevant for at the present moment.
I mean that's why I had on those 2 items, I had an asterisk against them with the sentence, these topics will require advanced preparation and committee to agree the methodology and process to review in advance. Because I wasn't aware of the working party either, so it does affect how committee deals with this via its work programme.
Yeah.
I have to say, Chairman, I think, to be honest with you, this seems to be getting worse and worse. We're talking about confidential papers, which none of us have seen. We've got an informal committee which is meeting and discussing and going to make recommendations without any recourse to anybody as far as I can see. I know Emma got a bit upset when I criticised the fact that this had happened. I'm not blaming Emma because at all, but obviously for me, this informal committee is doing, in my view, the work which this overview and scrutiny said it wanted to do.
Yeah,
and
but
I
it's
still
not a
say
committee,
that
Tony.
basically it is to a large extent taking over what we said that we would do. If there was going to be a sort of time and task panel, whatever you want, decided by this committee, fine. But I think to have a committee which none of us are really aware of, even the officers, I think really does probably warrant.
It's not a committee, Tony. It's a working group. It's not a
whatever
committee.
it is, Ken, none of us have had any input into this whatsoever. Nobody knows anything about it.
And Dave
at
Thomas
the end of
has.
the day, all this affects all of us in our particular divisions, whatever, and should never have been established. And it should have gone forward under the remit of overview and scrutiny. I'm sorry, and I appreciate your honesty and candor, but to me, this is totally wrong as what has happened. It should not have happened, and it should have been referred back to overview and scrutiny from whatever committee, this subcommittee that set it up. It should have been referred back to us for us to decide what happens. Sorry.
Yep. Sue wants to speak.
Can I make the point also that panels are not committees themselves? So it seems slightly odd to me that you have a panel that's not a committee that is then setting up a working group that none of us know about. It really does seem to me quite problematic, frankly.
I'm also curious about the reason why I said earlier on to Emma, I said, has this been set up under the play shaping panel? Because I do regularly look at those minutes and I hadn't seen anything set up from there. And when we talk about housing allocation policy, affordable housing provision, affordable housing, this is really more place shaping. I'm not quite getting the, I know there's the well-being kind of aspect, but if we're now talking about shaping housing provision policy, surely I would have thought that would have been under place shaping. You talked
Natasha
about
wants to
strategic
speak.
housing policy. Sorry, go on, Sue.
Natasha wanted to speak.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't see you, Natasha. Thanks. Go.
Hi.
Hi,
Thank
Natasha.
you.
This came up because, if I remember correctly, there was a consultation being made public about priorities regarding housing and homelessness and things like that. And there was discussion at the time about whether it had to be cancelled due to purdah with the general election that was coming up. And one of the reasons it came under well-being is because domestic abuse was one of the priorities for housing people. It wasn't just about homelessness and home building, etc. It was because of the aspect of prioritising domestic abuse victims and how we progress further with that. So I think that's the well-being aspect of it. But going back to what Sue said as well, yeah, it's a bit off, isn't it, when you think actually the panels are not Widdicombe in the way that committees are. We had to fight just to get Labour representation for me to even to attend a wellbeing panel, and now these non-Widdicombe panels are then setting up working groups, which their remits seem to be going beyond what a informal working group does. This should be surely something that should be for proper scrutiny with full cross-party involvement. And by full cross-party involvement, I mean, hello, there's another group here as well.
Yeah, I must say though, you have got a representative, Dave Thomas, there. So why isn't
He's not
he talking
mine.
to you? To you,
He's
Steve?
not my representative, is he?
No,
I'm from the
but he's
Labour
Steve's
Party, not the Lib
representative.
Dems. But that's not
No, it's not.
cross-party.
No. I'm not going to get into that, Ken, because I'm also picking up from other Conservative members here that they were unaware that you were their representative. So there's an issue all around the patch, if you ask me, right? So I'm not going to get into that now. I'm going to come now back to this. So on housing allocation policy, read the text that we've got here. To indicate joint scrutiny, and thanks, Natasha, because you've actually, and Sue, you've actually, and Ken as well, you've actually helped to pinpoint. Now you're talking about, you know, domestic, etc., on the well-being point, Natasha. So thank you for that. That's shedding a bit of light on why well-being, not place shaping, which actually should about strategic housing policy. So I'm not quite sure what its consultant's doing. However, if you read the text here, to undertake, and we did do this years ago actually, to undertake joint scrutiny of South Norfolk on contrast and compare the housing allocation policies of each authority to make recommendations. My view, and I believe it's still the view of the committee, the work party does not affect that. To undertake joint scrutiny of South Norfolk, investigate how effective each authority delivered affordable housing. Again, this work group, I don't believe affects that. An assessment of why Clarion Housing, the largest stockholder in Broadland, was no longer building affordable housing in the district. Don't think that working party affects that. So I believe, and this is the point that Tony was making earlier on, that they still stay on our work programme. We then move forward with Sarah to contacting these officers to then work forward how we can then schedule for this to attend, and I think we still proceed on the same basis. Do we agree that?
Yes, okay.
Yeah. All agreed?
Yes.
Thank you. Now on that basis, obviously Emma's getting delayed there, but I think we
strategic.
But I think we I'll talk to Emma after the meeting as well, and then we can get some chapter and verse coming back through to us in terms of an email, communication back to us on this in terms of when and where and how this is set up. But we've made a decision that we still want this on a work schedule, and we want to progress it in the way that's talked about here, and then Sarah can proceed on that basis as well. We've talked to these officers about proceeding on that basis. So that's the only way I think.
Councillor Bullman's got his hand up.
Who has?
Councillor Bullman.
Peter, I can't see you, but please fire away. Hello.
Hello.
You there,
Sorry,
Peter?
are you ready?
Ah, right.
It's a comment, really. Very fascinating discussion we've been having. What occurs to me is there seems to be a grave possibility of duplication. The work that we might do as part and parcel of our time and task panels, and the work that is being done by these informal groups that seem to be meeting without any great understanding of what they're doing or any great accountability. I suppose in both cases, any recommendations that they wish to make would have to come back to all the various committee structures in order to be ratified. But it is a bit worrying that we seem to have parallel universes going on without any cross-fertilization. And I just wonder whether, first of all, we're wasting time and energy, and secondly, whether we need to review all of this to establish a much better functioning organisation and machinery to deal with all of these issues. A comment.
Yes, but well, the issue that
Steve, can I just raise, sorry, point of order?
Yeah.
Is the meeting resumed now? Are we continuing with
Yes.
our meeting? Yes.
I don't
Thank
think
you.
so.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Yes. Now, I believe we've already taken the decision. Now, if you want to vote against that, Peter, just indicate.
No, I'm quite happy to vote with it. I just really a point of discussion, really. I agree with you entirely that we should have our work programme and we should continue with it.
On your
just
point,
what we're doing seems to be.
I agree. And on that point, Peter, you're raising, it's an issue about governance, isn't it? So this is the point now. We've asked Emma to go away and come back on.
Yeah.
It's the governance of.
There's a governance issue. There's also a waste of resources. You know, are we doing the same thing in parallel? Which seems crazy to me. We haven't got enough resources, we can waste them.
Yeah.
But no, I agree. We should go ahead as planned with our work programs.
Okie dokie. All right.
Can I just add in, Steve, please, that often we're being told about the use of officers' time, and it's important that we make sure we use officers' time well. And we've been told that sometimes perhaps we need to take things off our work programme because it's using up officers' time. Well, it's not surprising if they're being used in informal working groups, is it? So I'd just like to make that point.
Yes, it's yes. Okie dokie.
I agree, Sue.
Yes. So we've agreed with keeping these on. We want to progress them, and in terms of text we've got written there, Sarah. Emma's obviously going to come back. We'll want some chapter and verse on the governance for sure, and that can come back to us in the form of an email as well. And I think a number of us outside this meeting probably have some phone calls to make as well. So that's happening. Sorry.
Emma's back.
Ah. Okay. So we've cleared our work program. We'll just now take the governance on this from Emma, and then we'll close the meeting after that. See if I can see Emma actually. Hold on a minute.
Yeah, I'm here, Chair.
Ah, hi Emma.
I've been digging.
Okay.
That's a nice challenge set. Thank you very much. I've been able to get hold of some people, but not everybody. So I've done some digging, and what I've been able to find out, and I think probably I'm going to have to follow this up with an email because, with all due respect, in 15 minutes, trying to get to the bottom of it.
I've just for your benefit, Emma, I've just said that we've just closed the work program now. We've just said let's wait for Emma to come back on the governance. If she's not back in time, then I'll talk to you about sending an email out on the government.
Yeah, which I think I am going to need to do, Chair, because I've been able to get a hold of not many people because they're all extremely busy. So back in February, the working group was set up, and on the working group is Fran Wymark, Ken Kelly, Sue Lawn and Dave Thomas. They've met, as Ken said, I think 2 or 3 times. It's not about making decisions. I'm just waiting for the terms of reference for the group, so I think it's worth me sending that around once I've got it. just having a quick chat with who I was able to get a hold of. This is not about making, as I said earlier, about making any decisions. This is about kind of informing and working with members the direction that we want this to go in, and it's all planned to come back through the panels and scrutiny and cabinet, etc., as we work through it. That's all I've been able to get to the bottom of, and I know you've probably got questions, but I'm just not going to be able to answer them at the moment. So let me go away and do some more digging, and I'll send an email around to further clarify all of this, if that's okay, Chair.
Yeah, that's. Thank you very much, Emma. That's about where we kind of summed it up just now, and obviously someone's to be making phone calls as well after the meeting as well. So thanks, Emma. So all
Separate
agreed.
issue.
Sorry, separate issue.
Separate topic. The time and task panel for the apprenticeships.
Sorry, could you just come back on that one, because we.
Yeah, I did touch up on this point earlier. So in the comments section explains why there has been a delay. And then when we're at a point when we thought we could actually start that panel, having spoken to the officers concerned, now would not be a good time to actually do that piece of work for the reasons given on page 39. So unfortunately, it seems that that one is going to be on hold.
I would have thought this was the absolute time to look at this piece of work because of the effect of the COVID situation on apprentices. There's going to be an awful lot of apprentices or would-be apprentices who may not end up with their apprenticeship continuing. So
yeah, so that situation is obviously still ongoing. So what we're saying is we need to see the full impact of that before we actually start that piece of work, because now we're sort of in the middle of it.
Could I just also clarify it again, just coming back to the terms and reference for that time and task. So if we go to the objectives here, it was to undertake it specifically, and this was in May, June of last year. I even remember the room we was in. We was in the Trafford room downstairs, and I even remember the room where it happened. If you see there, if you go to bullet points, first bullet point, investigate the effect of the apprenticeship levy on the take-up of apprenticeships and its impact on small business. Scrutinise transport barriers for apprentices. Identify the reasons for reduction in level 2 apprentices, and any measures that council could take to mitigate. So it was actually around the levy and the effects of the levy. Now we've got another issue going on now around COVID. Now this affects business, which is another matter entirely. But in terms of what was agreed, the terms of reference that time and task, at the moment, I have to say, I concur. We're not in a position here actually to examine that on the levy because of what's happened, and we need to get COVID over so we can get back into these officers and back into the effects of that levy and the transport barriers, etc. Right now, on the terms and reference we've got for the time and task, as it was, we can't actually do that at the moment, even though we're ready, and Sarah was ready for us to do it. We clarified this some time ago. The other matter, Sue, is another matter entirely. It wasn't
right.
Not the terms of reference, Okay, so if we could, I'll move to close the meeting, everyone.
Chairman, if I may, I'm not entirely clear on whether you're going to have a time and task panel for water management or whether it's going to be something that's done out of the meeting with Emma and Sarah.
No, we've actually agreed this just now. We agreed that housing allocation policy, affordable housing provision, the text that is written there, we're saying whatever's going on in this working group is going on.
Oh, sorry.
I'm talking about water management.
Water management.
Sorry, it cut out then, the audio a bit. Sorry, going back to water management, where was we?
My understanding, it was just going to be an informal meeting between yourself, myself and an officer asked us to look at the questions that we want to take to scrutiny before we actually ask Anglian Water to come in. So it wasn't a formal time and task limited panel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it'd just be a scoping meeting.
Yeah.
In discussion, discussion, what suggesting was, I kind of agreed to, I think that really myself and the vice chair should be involved in a kind of mini time and task, look at that with you, with Emma, in terms of the questioning, you know, the relevant questions. We could also bring in a third member if we wanted to, but that might be quite an efficient way to deal with it, myself and the vice chair. So not a full-blown time and task, just on that point, and then we can come back to the full committee on it.
Yeah, I think you suggested yourself and Councillor Adams and Councillor Kelly.
I did. You're right, Kelly. You're right. You're absolutely right. So what? So the point you're just clarifying, James, you already had it.
I did, but it wasn't really agreed. It was suggested.
So we've agreed. Have we agreed, people? Please, yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Okay, so on that basis, I'm definitely going to bring this meeting to a conclusion. Thank you very much, all, and officers. Take care and stay safe.